Welcome to another season of Messengers, and this time I'm very excited to be with Michael Feeley. Michael Feeley is a former police officer, UK police officer, who basically changed his life around and became a code breaker of esoteric knowledge that before was only available to high initiates. But he's dived into it for many years and has now made it available to everyone so that we may be free. We're going to be speaking about a range of different subjects over the 6 episodes. The sonic blueprint of creation. We're going to talk about the Matrix, the Grail, the Holy Grail, King Arthur, how to find balance again, and so forth and so forth. But before we get into it, Michael, what really intrigues me is how do you go from being a police officer to doing something completely outside of the system?
It's an investigation of a different kind. And when I was in my teens and at school, and you used to have careers officers come in and you had to decide what career you wanted to do to shape what GCSEs and what exams you were going to do. I always wanted to do or work for the police because it's in my nature to want to help. It's in my nature to protect people in need. So I sort of gravitated towards that kind of occupation.
Archangel Michael.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Same name, same kind of frequency. Which Michael is actually alchemy. When you juggle the words around, it's alchemy. So I always wanted to do that career. And of course then, not so much now, but then it was an extremely difficult occupation to get into because they wanted people who had seen life experience. But nevertheless, when I was 18 and a half, which was the minimum age you can apply, the application was in on my 18th and a half birthday, really. And I got rejected a few times because, as I say, I'd got really no life experience. But eventually I managed to get in, and it took probably about 7 or 8 years of applying and determination to actually get in.
It did. You wanted it that much? There's nothing else you wanted?
Nothing else. So everything I did up until that point was simply just to fill in until I got what I want. But I always knew that I was going to get what I wanted. It was never a case of not. Such was the willpower and determination. And when I got in, I joined the Met in London. So I did my 18 and a half weeks of residential training and attending, which was literally weekly exams, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, uniform inspections. We had to march everywhere. We were assessed on pretty much everything, from paperwork to role plays to weekly exams, which you had to get 70% to pass. And week 1 was 1 week's work, week 2 was 2 weeks' work. So by the time you got to week 18, there's 18 weeks of law notes that you need to know to pass. And then I got through that. It was a 35% failure rate. So out of every 100 recruits that went through the doors, only 65 of them went out at the end of the course. There was a doctor on site and a nurse because it was so stressful. It was the hardest police training centre perhaps in the world, certainly the UK. And once I'd finished my training, I was stationed in North London, and I always wanted to be on the front line simply because you can get there at the time that things are happening and you can make a difference. And eventually, because I wasn't from London and it's so expensive to live there, I decided I was going to come back home to my home force. And again, I worked the front line in Birmingham for the rest of my career. So I worked for 17 years of a 30-year career. Towards the end of that 17 years, I began to get very, very disillusioned with the public service as it was and some of the things that I was being asked to do, which were 1, immoral, and 2, illegal.
Can you name a few examples?
Yeah, absolutely. We were told to initiate stop and searches on people who were walking dogs and jogging, which is illegal. A stop and search for a police officer is to get someone to account for their whereabouts at a particular time in a particular location. So for argument's sake, if it's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning and you're driving down residential streets and that particular area has a lot of car crime and you see a couple of youths walking down the street, then you stop them, you initiate a stop and say, what are you doing in this area at this time? Now you can't do that if someone's jogging through a park or walking a dog through the park, because that's illegal. Because why should they have to account for their actions when it's obvious what they're doing? It's not a high crime area, it's not a high crime time, and we were being asked to do that. I personally witnessed KPIs, which is key performance indicators, which is the likes of vehicle crime, theft of a vehicle or theft from the vehicle. So if someone breaks in and steals your car, or someone smashes the window and steals a stereo or a sat-nav, that is a theft from a motor vehicle. Those two are KPI crimes. And because the force wanted to look good in terms of KPI crimes, what they used to do is when such crimes happened, they used to rename it to vehicle interference, which is not a KPI. So in other words, the crime rate was going up, but because they'd renamed it, it appeared as if it wasn't.